You don't like it?
The Lost Saucer.
Beam us aboard. That line still echoes from The Lost Saucer, but this wasn't just another Saturday morning kids show. The Lost Saucer wasn't just a slice of 1970s sci-fi. It was a time-warped fever dream wrapped in slapstick comedy, bizarre creatures, and relentless chaos that left kids both laughing and slightly terrified. One world forced people to laugh or face arrest. One pet was chained to a treadmill to power civilization. And one creature? Let's just say its head and body didn't exactly match, and it haunted childhood memories forever. These are 40 strangest facts about the Lost Saucer, but wait until the end, because the bonus fact reveals how a sidekick pet outshone the human stars. So fasten your seatbelts, fire up the boot jets, and prepare to watch your nostalgia short circuit. Fact 1. Chickafants Gone Wild.
Stop, please, where are you taking us? We're saving you from danger.
1975, children's television was already weird, but then came the Chickafant, a creature with an elephant body and a chicken head. Enter Jerry, Alice, Fi, Fum, and their shaggy pet Dorse, stumbling into a prehistoric future hybrid world. What begins as silly Krofft slapstick escalates into full fever dream. Dorse rolls a massive egg into the saucer, only for it to hatch into the flip side version, a chicken body with an elephant head. This wasn't just a monster of the week, it was a living meme before memes existed. Kids laughed, parents winced, and producers leaned into the absurd. The Chickafant cemented The Lost Saucer as a show where logic wasn't required, just a high tolerance for chaos. Fact 2, the law that forced you to laugh.
Human. Thank you.
By 2018, people in the Lost Saucer timeline weren't free to smile on their own. They were forced to laugh non-stop by wall-mounted ionators, citizens cracked up against their will, guards patrolled for anyone who dared stop. Fi and Fum, programmed with crying circuits, malfunctioned spectacularly in this society. It's satire disguised as slapstick. What happens when joy becomes mandatory, even criminalized if missing. The result was a dystopia more chilling than funny. This episode predicted debates we'd later have about forced happiness in work culture. But on Saturday mornings, kids just saw androids getting zapped into giggles. Fact 3, Fatropolis, where thinness was outlawed.
What's going on?
Oh, can't run away on.
In Fatropolis, the androids land in a world where being slim is illegal. Humans must gorge until they're massive because robots do all the labor. Enter Governor Girth and a robot named Zonk wrestling for dominance. The satire bites hard. Convenience makes people soft. And technology erases struggle. Fum, built for pratfalls, suddenly becomes the hero when he defeats Zonk in the ring. Saturday morning TV never looked stranger. One part pro wrestling, one part body-shaming comedy, and one part warning about laziness. Fatropolis wasn't just a gag, it was a dystopian prophecy about our own relationship with automation and comfort. Fact 4, stock market dots on your skin.
Right on. Love that goofed up time machine.
Imagine waking up and your social worth depends on a colored dot on your skin. That's Mr. Moo's world, where fortunes rise and fall with glowing skin markers linked to the market. Fi and Fum stumble in, and their crying circuits overload Moo's entire trading system. What starts as satire about finance becomes a literal meltdown. This was long before Wall Street satire like Trading Places. Kids in 1975 probably didn't get the metaphor, but adults watching sure did. The Lost Saucer wasn't afraid to drop heavy social commentary, hidden inside slapstick about robots short-circuiting in a capitalist dystopia. Fact 5, Atlantis, Rust, TV, and Nepto's scheme.
I think we better let him know we're here. Just when it's getting interesting.
The crew dives into Atlantis, but instead of mythic wonder, they meet Nepto, who hijacks their saucer and converts it into a TV station. Yes, an undersea empire obsessed with broadcasting. Worse, Fi and Fum literally rust solid mid-performance. Frozen android statues in a Krofft fever dream. It's absurd, it's tragic, and it's oddly prophetic. In 1975, TV already dominated American living rooms. Atlantis simply pushed the obsession underwater. This episode wasn't just weird, it was Krofft commentary on screen addiction before we had smartphones. Fact 6, outlawed energy and Dorse power.
Okay, activate memory bank.
In one future, energy devices are outlawed. Instead, science collapses backward, reviving old school water wheels and manual labor. The androids stumble into chaos when scientists spot Dorse and shackle him to a treadmill. Suddenly, the lovable pet becomes a generator. Dorse power, replacing horsepower. This absurd gag mirrored real 1970s fears of the oil crisis, but delivered through a dog-horse hybrid chained to keep the lights on. Kids laughed, adults groaned at the satire, and the writers slipped in one of their most bizarre warnings. Desperation makes societies do ridiculous things. Fact 7. Gulliver tied down in miniature future.
And the electrode is connected to the cathode.
In the Little Nick's episode, society has shrunk itself to conserve resources. Normal-sized Jerry becomes a giant intruder in their mini-world. Within minutes, he's roped down like Gulliver by tiny panicked citizens. What should have been a moral tale about conservation turns slapstick as Fi and Fum scramble to negotiate Jerry's freedom. The show layered absurdity with genuine commentary. How far would humanity go to save itself from scarcity? The answer, in Croftland, was shrink everyone down until even babysitters could play Godzilla. Fact 8, Argo City, duplicator madness.
See, Your Honor, we're just two strangers lost in time, and we had no way of...
On paper, Argo City sounds orderly. In practice, it's chaos. A duplicator has created a society where the judge, the president, even the police officer all look exactly the same. When Fi and Fum tinker with the tech, it malfunctions and starts cloning Fum endlessly. Soon, the saucer is swarmed with bumbling duplicates, each less competent than the last. The episode plays as slapstick, but beneath it lurks paranoia about conformity and loss of individuality. Argo City wasn't just a set piece. It was Krofft's way of mocking the facelessness of bureaucracy, delivered with a laugh track. Fact 9, vanishing in Invisiblia.
I think we better fly.
You're right. Activate air jets.
Invisiblia sounds like a cool sci-fi utopia, but the reality? Terrifying. The entire city is invisible, and so are its citizens. The twist: anyone who misuses their tech risks vanishing forever. Jerry and Alice stumble into the city only to learn that Fi and Fum are accidentally triggering the very devices that erase people from existence. The mayor, Mr. Vroom, warns them. But here's the kicker. His obsession with controlling outsiders is the real reason the city keeps disappearing. Invisiblia wasn't just strange TV. It was a parable about xenophobia. Hide too much, fear too much, and you literally vanish from relevance. For kids, it was a wacky adventure. For adults, it was a chilling metaphor about fear eating societies alive. Krofft wrapped it all up in slapstick, but the message still lurked under the giggles. Fact 10, Goro the robot who begged for mercy.
Let's just hope we don't get carried away with it the way they did down there.
Enter Goro, a clumsy, oversized robot destined for the scrap heap. In a world where mistakes meant instant recycling, Goro becomes a tragicomic figure. Imagine a giant metal being, pleading not to be dismantled because his wiring wasn't perfect. Fi and Fum, who know a thing or two about faulty circuits, step in to defend him. They try upgrading Goro, but of course, chaos follows. The story carried emotional resonance. Who hasn't feared being discarded for imperfection? For kids, it was silly fun, a bumbling bot tripping over himself. For parents watching, it was an allegory about a throwaway culture and the cruelty of judging worth purely on efficiency. Saturday morning TV accidentally slipped in one of the most human lessons ever told by android clowns and a horse-dog hybrid. Fact 11, Fum's amnesia meltdown.
We're too late. We're not responding.
We're gonna hit the water.
When the saucer crash lands in a solar-powered city, Fum suddenly suffers a programming wipe, total amnesia. Enter Lyra, a gleaming female android who lures him away, promising adventure and escape from servitude. What should have been another gag episode becomes uncomfortably emotional. Fi and the kids scramble to remind Fum who he is, while Lyra tries to convince him he's destined for something greater. The spectacle peaks when Fum nearly abandons his entire crew. In a show built on pratfalls, here was a real existential crisis. What makes you you if memory and identity can be deleted with one malfunction? Kids laughed when Fum walked into walls. Adults paused at the raw metaphor about free will, loyalty, and the fragile wiring of our own identities. Fact 12, dream-o-vision gone wrong.
He was just accidentally sucked through your airlock.
Back on ZR3, Fi and Fum finally get a chance to relax. They slide into futuristic dream-o-vision recliners. Imagine full-body VR chairs that beam fantasies straight into your brain. The problem? While they're blissfully dreaming, Commander Stickler orders their permanent reassignment to mindless farm duty. The contrast is wild. Paradise screens overlaid with the reality of losing freedom. The androids fight against both their own blissful sedation and bureaucratic control. For kids, it was a psychedelic visual treat. For older viewers, it was biting commentary about escapism. Too much comfort, too much fantasy, and suddenly you're trapped while authority steals your life. The Lost Saucer turned a gag about lazy recliners into an allegory about technology, distraction, and the price of ignoring reality. Fact 13, Frankenstein's descendant gets weird.
The technical advances are indeed amazing.
I'm glad you like it.
Dr. Frankenstein the 13th isn't a monster maker. He's a tinkering descendant obsessed with acquiring Fi and Fum. The setup feels like gothic parody, but quickly veers into Krofft madness when he actually reprograms the androids to serve him. Suddenly, the bumbling clowns become sinister. Their circuits rewired to betray Jerry, Alice, and even Dorse. The absurdity hits hardest when Frankenstein's plans collapse under the android's natural tendency to short-circuit at the worst possible time. The imagery, lab coats, gothic lightning, androids turned traitors, landed somewhere between Frankenstein and a laugh-in sketch. For kids, it was spooky fun. For adults, it hinted at something deeper. The eternal human temptation to reprogram others for personal gain. Only in Krofftland could Mary Shelley's themes collide with slapstick Rust jokes. Fact 14, a city that vanished from fear.
Hey, Fi, you know I've always wanted to break into show business.
One of the show's strangest morality plays. Mr. Vroom's paranoia about foreigners makes his invisible city literally disappear. Instead of embracing outsiders, he installs security devices and enforces strict distrust. The irony? His obsession with safety erases the very society he's trying to protect. Fi and Fum accidentally prove the point when their presence destabilizes the city into nothingness. This wasn't subtle satire. It was Krofft yelling that xenophobia self-destructs. For 1975, it was surprisingly bold, a kid's comedy delivering a political gut punch. Parents in the room caught the message. Kids just saw robots bumbling in a city that blinked in and out of existence. Either way, the story stuck, cementing the Lost Saucer's reputation for hiding warnings inside its wackiest worlds. Fact 15, talking plants and vine prisons.
Let me present that great new android team of Fi and Fum.
Picture it. Fi and Fum stumble into a lush green paradise. Within minutes, the paradise reveals its teeth. Talking plants, controlled by a schemer named Mulch, suddenly lash out, covering the androids in fast-growing vines. Jerry and Alice watch as their friends are literally absorbed by greenery. The plants weren't just set dressing, they had personalities, demands, and grudges. The rescue finally comes from Chlorophyll, a botanist who believes in communication over domination. On the surface, it's a gag about robots tangled in shrubbery. Underneath, it's eco-satire. The 1970s saw America wrestling with pollution and conservation, and here came Krofft, sneaking in a warning about treating nature as an enemy instead of a partner. Kids screamed, "Yuck," while adults muttered, that's uncomfortably close to home. Fact 16, food synthesizer, peanuts as weapons.
You know, they're so nice, I just keep forgetting they're machines.
What starts as a silly gadget, the saucer's food synthesizer becomes one of the show's most absurd running gags. In the Chickafant world, Fi uses it to fire giant peanuts at enemies. In other episodes, it churns out oversized eggs, towering loaves of bread, and even unstable desserts. The absurdity wasn't just visual, it was thematic. Technology built to sustain life constantly spiraled into chaos, turning meals into weapons. The synthesizer represented both abundance and danger. Too much of anything can collapse a situation. For kids, it was hilarious. Giant peanuts knocking over cavemen. For adults, it was a parody of 1970s faith in miracle tech solving everything. Instead, the saucer showed us that sometimes the miracle turns into mayhem. Fact 17, emotional circuits, short-circuiting society.
You saved us from a fate worse than a scrap heap.
Fi and Fum weren't just androids. They were walking mood swings. Their crying circuits could gush tears on command, and when things spiraled, they'd laugh uncontrollably until smoke puffed out of their ears. In one world, their emotional outbursts literally collapsed an economy by frying Mr. Moo's stock dot system. In another, their tears shorted out security barriers. The gag worked like clockwork. Androids built to mimic feelings turned fragile societies upside down. On the surface, it was slapstick. Beneath, it was satire about emotions disrupting systems that demand cold efficiency. Kids cracked up watching the robots bawl. Adults saw something darker. The reminder that no system, no matter how efficient, survives when human emotions refuse to be programmed out. Fact 18. Boot jets to the rescue.
You have been looking a bit pale around the guild lately.
Every sci-fi hero needs a getaway move, and Fi and Fum had boot jets. Sleek silver boots with mini thrusters let them zip up into the air, sometimes gracefully, sometimes with pratfall crashes. On paper, it was a handy device. Pop on the jets, escape from cavemen or dodge guards. In practice, it usually ended in chaos. One famous sequence shows Fi spinning out of control midair, screaming as smoke sputters from her feet. The gag wasn't just physical comedy, it was Krofft mocking sci-fi tech promises. Jetpacks were 1970s symbols of the future, and here were two androids proving they were unreliable, dangerous, and laugh out loud funny. For kids, the jets looked cool. For parents, it was a wink. The shiny future isn't as smooth as promised. Fact 19. Dorse, the four-legged plot device.
You better activate internal lubrication.
Half dog, half horse, all chaos, Dorse wasn't just a pet, he was often the real hero. From sniffing out hidden doors to pressing ship buttons with his snout, Dorse solved problems the androids couldn't. His most famous moment, rolling that giant egg into the saucer, unleashing the Chickafant's nightmare cousin. Performed by Larry Larson in a shaggy suit, Dorse was both ridiculous and oddly lovable. Krofft shows always had a creature mascot, but Dorse blurred comedy with plot utility. He was Scooby-Doo, Lassie, and a sideshow freak rolled into one. Kids adored him. Critics called him one of TV's weirdest pets. But without him, half the episodes would have ended in disaster. Sometimes the strangest invention isn't the stars, it's the sidekick who carries the story on four legs. Fact 20. Puns that ruled the worlds.
I wasn't fishing chimp at Y Camp for nothing, you know.
Krofft Productions thrived on absurd names, and the Lost Saucer doubled down. Governor Girth ruled Fetropolis. Mr. Vroom ran Invisiblia. Commander Stickler enforced rules on Zier 3. Even Frankenstein's heir wasn't scary, just silly. The show weaponized wordplay, turning each society into a walking pun. For kids, these names made the worlds instantly cartoonish. For adults, they were satire. Girth, symbolizing excess. Stickler, representing bureaucracy. Vroom tied to paranoia and speed. Every pun came with a wink, but the repetition created a rhythm. Every planet, every city, every villain was a caricature of real authority. The humor was cheap but sharp. In just one name, Krofft told you everything about the character and the society collapsing around them. That's efficiency disguised as comedy. Fact 21, double casting on ZR3.
You took the words right off the tip of my tape deck.
When the saucer finally returns to Fi and Fum's home planet ZR3, kids get a double take. Jim Nabors and Ruth Buzzi suddenly appear not just as androids, but as Professor Pringle and Dr. Locker. Yes, the stars were literally playing themselves twice in the same episode. It wasn't high-tech trickery, just costumes and clever editing. But the effect was surreal. Two neighbors, two Buzzis, four over-the-top performances colliding. For children, it was hilarious duplication. For adults, it was self-aware parody of sitcom stunt casting. The doubling wasn't random. It reinforced the theme of repetition, duplication, and absurdity across the series. Krofft knew the cast's comedic chemistry was the show's best weapon, so why not double it? Viewers got chaos squared and loved every minute. Fact 22. Blowing fuses as punchlines.
He didn't disobey. He did exactly what you told him to do.
Whenever Fi or Fum hit stress overload, sparks flew. Literally. Their circuits popped, their eyes blinked wildly, and they'd yell, "I think I just blew a fuse." It became one of the show's signature punchlines. In Krofftland, malfunctions weren't dangerous. They were comedy gold. Each fuse blow disrupted the plot at the worst possible time. In courtrooms, during rescues, even mid-battle. What started as a gag evolved into metaphor. The androids were walking reminders that everyone has breaking points. Push too hard, and even the perfect machines collapse into chaos. For kids, it was just slapstick explosions. For parents, it was strangely relatable. Who hasn't felt like Fi and Fum when life overloads your circuits? Fact 23. Wrestling with Zonk in Fetropolis.
All we know is that we want to get out of here, and we want to take our Dorse with us.
Fetropolis wasn't just about food laws. It climaxed in a bizarre wrestling match. Enter Zonk, a towering robot enforcer. To save their friends, Fum was shoved into the ring, facing off against a mechanical Hulk. What follows looks like WWE on a shoestring budget. Pratfall throws, sparks, and Fum getting slammed into ropes. But against all odds, the bumbling android defeats Zonk. The satire here was twofold, mocking wrestling's theatrical absurdity and skewering societies where strength equals status. For kids, it was pure spectacle. Robot versus android. For adults, it was social commentary about performance, competition, and who really wins when systems demand brute force. Fum's victory was ridiculous but symbolic. Sometimes incompetence itself is resistance. Fact 24. Contagious laughter and tears. If you thought a laugh track was just background noise, The Lost Saucer proved otherwise. Whenever Fi or Fum spiraled into uncontrollable laughter or tears, it spread like a virus. Characters nearby caught it too, doubling over in giggles or sobs until entire scenes collapsed. This gag reached peak chaos in the Laughing Law world, where laughter wasn't just contagious, it was required. The show blurred comedy and dystopia, reminding viewers that emotions aren't always voluntary. Kids giggled along at home, swept up in the silliness. Adults caught the undertone. Enforced conformity and emotional contagion can be scarier than monsters. Krofft turned what should have been background sound into a weaponized story device. It was slapstick with teeth, proving even giggles can explode into chaos. Fact 25. Commander Stickler's obsession with rules.
All we need is some clothes to cover up our gizmos.
On ZR3, Fi and Fum finally reach home, only to be snared by Commander Stickler, a bureaucrat obsessed with procedure. He doesn't see them as explorers or heroes. He sees broken androids overdue for reassignment. His solution? Ship them off to farm duty. Imagine high-tech androids forced to plow fields because one rulebook says so. Stickler wasn't just a character, he was a parody of authority itself. So rigid, he demolished creativity with paperwork. For kids, it was silly. A guy barking rules. For adults, it stung. Bureaucracy smothers innovation, even in space. Stickler's scenes became a warning that sometimes the scariest villains aren't monsters. They're pencil pushers with too much power. Fact 26. Alice Playton's babysitter in peril.
Stop it! Now you've got to find someplace else to play. We've got big problems here.
Alice wasn't just Jerry's babysitter, she was the show's emotional anchor. Playton, a Broadway-trained actress, poured genuine panic into her performance as she stumbled through insane worlds with wide-eyed terror. One minute she's tied down by mini-citizens, the next she's nearly drowned in Atlantis. Her character kept the chaos relatable, because viewers saw themselves in her fear. Unlike Fi and Fum, who turned disasters into pratfalls, Alice screamed, flailed, and looked like she might quit babysitting forever. It wasn't just comic relief, it was performance brilliance, grounding a surreal show in real human reactions. Alice became the audience surrogate in a series that otherwise felt like a hallucination. Fact 27, Jerry the Kid Giant.
Yes, well, I love being your magic elbow.
Jerry, played by Jared Johnson, wasn't just comic sidekick material. He became a full-on giant in the Little Nick's episode, towering over tiny citizens who tied him down. His role highlighted the bizarre contrast between child and society, how innocence collides with rules. Jerry's giant status wasn't heroic, it was humiliating. He became the outsider punished simply for existing. Krofft slipped in a cruel truth. Kids often feel powerless, even when physically larger than life. His Gulliver-like predicament reflected a child's nightmare of being singled out and restrained. Saturday mornings rarely tackled powerlessness so bluntly, but The Lost Saucer turned it into slapstick, complete with ropes, mini-huts, and Jerry blinking in disbelief as his freedom vanished. Fact 28. Duplicating Fum into chaos.
Emergency stations, emergency stations.
Argo City's duplicator didn't just make clones, it made endless Fums. Imagine dozens of bumbling androids tripping over each other, short-circuiting in unison, their elbows firing lasers randomly. What started as a helpful machine quickly collapsed into duplication hell. One Fum was already too much. A dozen? Utter disaster. The gag snowballed until the saucer was overcrowded. The crew buried under incompetence. Beneath the laughter, the metaphor was sharp. Mass conformity destroys individuality and smothers progress. Krofft disguised social commentary under pratfalls, giving kids a hilarious mess while adults muttered, "That's our government office." Argo City became one of the show's strangest cautionary tales. More isn't better, especially when what you're multiplying is broken to begin with. Fact 29, Jim Nabors' double life.
Now let me run this problem through data analysis.
Jim Nabors wasn't just Fum. In the same episode, he also played Professor Pringle, a bumbling scientist on ZR3. Watching Nabors bicker with himself in split scenes was surreal, but it showcased his comic timing. Known as Gomer Pyle, Nabors leaned into absurdity here, arguing with his android self about logic and procedure. Kids didn't care about acting chops, they just saw two Fums for the price of one. But adults recognized the satire, television recycling its stars endlessly, forcing them into new roles with barely a costume change. Nabors, ever the pro, turned what could have been lazy gimmickry into comedy chaos. It was meta before meta was cool, giving The Lost Saucer a self-aware wink. Fact 30, Ruth Buzzi's comedy DNA.
I think it's time for your electromagnetic beam.
Ruth Buzzi came from Laugh-In, where her Gladys Ormsby character was legendary. On The Lost Saucer, she channeled that manic energy into Fi, then doubled down as Dr. Locker on ZR3. Watching Buzzi malfunction, sob hysterically, or yell, "Oh dear," was like seeing sketch comedy hijack science fiction. She wasn't just slapstick, she was glue. Without her energy, Fi would have been forgettable. Instead, she became the emotional engine of the series. Buzzi's DNA ran through every pratfall, every meltdown, every malfunction gag. For kids, she was hilarious. For adults, she was comedy royalty, slumming it in polyester, but still commanding every scene. Fact 31. The food synthesizer's chaotic legacy.
Oh my gosh, we're on a collision course with a meteorite.
The saucer's food synthesizer wasn't just a gadget, it was a metaphor for unchecked abundance. Every time Fi used it, something exploded. Peanuts knocked over cavemen, loaves smothered villains, eggs cracked into chaos. Instead of solving hunger, it created slapstick disasters. For kids, this was funny excess. For adults, it was biting commentary. Technology promising solutions often creates bigger messes. The synthesizer became a running gag, reminding viewers that Krofft loved tech satire. You could build machines to feed the world, but in their hands, it just made more problems. It was sci-fi optimism smashed against Krofft cynicism, wrapped in peanuts and pratfalls. Fact 32. The invisible city's collapse.
When our time vortex malfunctions, it really malfunctions.
In Invisibilia, fear of outsiders wasn't just paranoia. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mr. Vroom designed devices to keep his city hidden, but the more he enforced secrecy, the more his city literally vanished. Fi and Fum accidentally triggered the collapse, proving that obsession with protection destroys the very thing it tries to save. For kids, the effect was visual magic, a city blinking in and out like a bad TV signal. For adults, it was satire. Xenophobia eats itself alive. The episode echoed 1970s debates on isolationism, disguised as comedy chaos. Invisibilia became one of the show's sharpest social critiques, hiding under giggles and malfunctioning androids. Fact 33. Sparks and malfunctions as running gags.
On 200,000 years.
Well, I can recheck it.
Every time Fi or Fum hit stress overload, sparks flew like fireworks. Their circuits popped, their arms stiffened, and they'd shout, "Fuse blown!" It became one of the series' most reliable punchlines. But the gag wasn't just physical comedy, it worked as metaphor. The androids represented how everyone eventually cracks under pressure. Push too hard, and even machines collapse into chaos. For kids, it was a laugh riot, watching robots spark like broken toasters. For adults, it was strangely human. Krofft's reminder that perfection is fragile. In every meltdown, you saw your own bad day mirrored. Fact 34. Wrestling spectacle with Zonk.
Us, what did we do?
But we were designed to help, man.
Petropolis gave us one of TV's strangest bouts, Fum versus Zonk, a hulking robot. It wasn't just a fight, it was slapstick pro wrestling, Krofft style. Fum, clumsy and confused, stumbled through throws, sparks, and pratfalls. Yet somehow he toppled Zonk, proving incompetence can win. The match mocked both wrestling's theatrics and societies that glorify brute strength. For kids, it was hilarious spectacle, robots crashing in the ring. For adults, it was satire. Even winners are absurd when the system itself is broken. Fum's victory became a strange symbol. Sometimes bumbling resistance beats mechanical power. Fact 35, contagious laughter and tears, weaponized.
I am running out of power.
The androids' emotions didn't just overwhelm them, they spread like wildfire. When Fi sobbed uncontrollably, others in the room collapsed into tears. When Fum erupted in giggles, whole crowds followed. The gag peaked in laughing law, where laughter wasn't just contagious, it was enforced. Suddenly, what seemed funny became dystopian. Emotions turned into chains. Krofft flipped slapstick into nightmare, showing how conformity steals individuality. Kids joined the giggles at home. Adults caught the undertone. Enforced joy can be scarier than sadness. It was the laugh track turned sinister, proof that even comedy can explode into chaos. Fact 36. General Service Studios' Surreal.
When we get back to our time, I'm gonna send you back to the shop.
Sets production for The Lost Saucer unfolded at General Service Studios in Hollywood, a facility famous for housing everything from I Love Lucy to sci-fi B-movies. Krofft filled its stages with glittering saucers, oversized vines, and underwater Atlantean sets. The surreal designs were cheap but inventive, recycling props from other Krofft shows. The result was an aesthetic that looked both futuristic and bargain bin, which actually amplified the show's weirdness. Kids didn't care about budget, they saw whole universes inside TV boxes. For adults, the patchwork style made the show look like a parody of sci-fi itself. Fact 37. Only 16 episodes, Eternal Legacy.
It can turn out most anything provided the right data is put into the computer.
Despite all its madness, The Lost Saucer only produced 16 episodes. Airing from September 1975 through 1976, it should have vanished. But Krofft reran it inside the Krofft Super Show and later in syndication through the Krofft Superstars package. That's how an obscure, short-lived series burned itself into the memories of a generation. Kids growing up in the late 70s and early 80s saw it daily, never realizing it was already dead. 16 episodes expanded into legend, proving sometimes a small run can echo longer than endless seasons. Fact 38. The year 2369 and ZR3.
Up there it's a jungle. Well, back to the database.
Fi and Fum weren't random oddballs. They were androids from the year 2369, residents of the planet ZR3. The show never fully explained why they time traveled, but their backstory painted them as bumbling explorers gone rogue. For kids, it added legitimacy. These weren't just clowns in shiny suits, they had futuristic roots. For adults, it was absurd. 1,000 years in the future, and society still builds robots that cry, laugh, and break down constantly. The year 2369 wasn't a vision of progress. It was Krofft's way of saying, the future will be just as messy as the present. Fact 39. Critics called it Doctor Who meets laughing.
Congratulations. For a human being, that was good thinking.
Reviews at the time, and later retrospectives, couldn't pin down The Lost Saucer. Some called it Lost in Space on Laughing Gas. Others compared it to Doctor Who filtered through Laugh-In. That paradox was its charm. It mashed satire, slapstick, and sci-fi into a fever dream that no network would greenlight today. Critics panned its cheap sets but praised its surreal imagination. It didn't just parody television, it became a parody of itself, blazing a path for cult status decades later. What seemed disposable in 1975 became unforgettable weird TV history. Fact 40. The show's true legacy, absurd chaos is comfort.
We've got to get back to the shipping, Jerry, and take off again. Yeah, let's hurry.
At its heart, The Lost Saucer wasn't about robots, kids, or even Dorse. It was about chaos. Absurd, relentless, and oddly comforting. Every malfunction, every pun, every surreal world told kids, life doesn't always make sense, but you can laugh anyway. Its brief run proved that sometimes the weirdest art lasts longest. Nostalgia keeps it alive, whispered in fan forums, referenced in retrospectives, and remembered in childhood memories. It wasn't polished, it wasn't logical, it was raw, messy creativity, and that's why it endures.